The following is a fan-made review show. These are not official reviews, nor commissioned, nor monetized videos. All works featured on this channel are properties of their respective owners. Please support the official releases.
Greetings and welcome, brave citizens of our new world and groveling humans. I am Toronto's greatest supervillain and evil genius, Dr. Holocaust, and you are watching anime Bloodbath.
I know it's been a while, but I finally got the set back together again. And yeah, it may not look as spacious as it was before, but believe me, this will have to do for now. But it seems rather fitting, actually, that I start up the show again with this episode in particular. This time we're looking at an anime that's on everyone's most violent of list, with its over-the-top violence, gore, and outright cruelty. I'm talking, of course, about Elfen Lied, the show that single-handedly brought me back into anime with its gut-wrenching violence and over-the-top gore. It's no surprise it's on everyone's most violent of list. And yeah, I do say it's on everyone's most violent of list, and that's because it is. I know I may be going off a topic a tad, but believe me, I have a point to make here. If you go on YouTube and look at violent and gory anime, Elfen Lied is guaranteed to be on anyone's list, whether you agree with those lists or not. Most of the lists I've seen, though, have listed the show as number 1 or number 2, which says a lot about the taste of the macabre. But hey, who am I to judge? But, to be fair, I know why the anime surprised and shocked a lot of people, and it is the violence to an extent, but I give the show a lot more credit than that. The show presents itself with just enough cutesy imagery to judge a book by its cover. Now think about it like this, if you told me in 2005 that this seemingly cute anime girl and others like her would bring about the extinction of all mankind, I'd probably laugh in your face. Nowadays, stuff like this is kind of to be expected, and we get fooled every once in a while with shows like Madoka Magica, pretending to be something that they're clearly not, and gambling with the naivety of the target audience solely based on appearance. Where am I going with this? Well, as much as I hate to say it, I think Elfen Lied has lost its luster because of these modern expectations. Or to put it more bluntly, I don't think it particularly aged well. Let me state for the record to say that I still like this series, and it's this show in particular that sparked the violent anime craze for me, and I'll go as far as to say that without Elfen Lied, this channel would not exist. I love this show, but not for the reasons that people think I would. Is it the violence? Yeah, that helps sway my opinion, but there's something else that attracts me to this series. And to fully explore this in depth, I need to first take a gander at the story. The story follows a Nyclonius named Lucy and her exploits after being taken in by a college student, Kota, and his cousin Yuka. Lucy, having suffered some head trauma during her violent escape from a shady government facility, develops a split personality which brings out a childlike personality out of her, and is quickly taken into Kota and Yuki's care. All the while, the organization Lucy escaped from is doing whatever they can to locate her and bring her back, dead or alive. The story is nothing special, and to be honest, some of the plot points are brought up or quickly dropped in favor of new characters, side stories, backstories, and filler. I will be leaning with the show, since it does have a 13-episode running time, which barely gives it enough time to fully develop the characters and fully address some of the key issues with our lead protagonists, like a proper resolution to the incest subplot that never went anywhere, among other things. Regardless, it's still no excuse to explain some of the lazy writing decisions made here to condense the material to make it as cinematic as possible. Now, don't get me wrong, I like that quality in an anime, but when it's the primary focus rather than its story and its characters, it becomes a detriment to the series as a whole. But where the show really shines, though, is through its extreme depiction of the depths of human depravity. The series shows humanity at its absolute worst, having children being murdered and abused physically, emotionally, and sexually, people being conniving and manipulative cunts to get whatever the hell they want, and abusing their power frequently without any regard for life, participating acts in animal cruelty, bullying, and outright sadism. That is something that I admire about this anime, not because of the violence or disturbing content, but how it presents a very cutthroat and relentless world, and when it hits you hard. There's no sugarcoating it. In this universe, people drop like flies, and they just simply have to live and accept this as an everyday occurrence. With that being said, you can't help but sympathize with these characters going through the hardships and torment. But it begs the question, Do you truly feel invested in these characters enough to care for them, or do you simply feel bad because bad things are happening to innocent people? The downside to this kind of emotional pandering falls on the anime itself, as it relies too much on the violence to fuel the drama that these characters are going through. I mean, seriously, anyone who has seen the show, I implore you, tell me one character conflict does not begin or end in some sort of violence or abuse. If you're having a hard time trying to find one, I don't blame you because it's literally non-existent, and for the show to be this bleak just for the sake of being unpleasant isn't really the right way to go about being disturbing. The atrocities being committed are ultimately what carry the show, and it's most unfortunate that the show has to go this route rather than focusing more on the characters and the inner workings of why things are the way they are. And ironically, some of the series' most powerful moments don't come from violence or gore, but through true cathartic releases. Look at this scene with Nana. She's looking at it afar as she watches her father figure explode with his daughter in his arms, and all she could do is watch, helpless as she can do nothing. Look at the distraught look on her face. She lost the one person that kept her going through sheer force of will. You can see this from the very beginning through her desperate acts of trying to impress him. She's as naive as she is innocent, and you feel for her in this moment. A true cathartic release. Not one designed to shock, but one that is earned. You don't feel anything from the same level from anything in this series that comes from the violence. And it's a major series misstep. It could have had its cake and eat it too, but instead it got too greedy, letting the shock value overtake the true drama of the story, and as a result, the scenes that have heavy dramatic weight have no merit. I get the impression that the show is trying to answer a question. Who's the real monster here, the Cyclonius or the humans? But neither are given a fair opportunity to contrast one another, since the unpleasantness dominates the majority of the screen time. Now, that's not to say that the anime is completely devoid of kindness and compassion. The show does have its soft, quieter moments where the series tries to strive for balance between the shocking material, but the scenes are so few and far between that it builds unnecessary contrast to an already brutal and harsh environment. Anyways, those are some of the major flaws I found revisiting the show now. Otherwise, my original analysis of what I thought of the show upon reviewing still applies. The voice acting in both Japanese and English are okay for the most part. Both dubs of the show sit well with me, with the exception of some characters' voices. Nana! But some of the voices in either sub or dub kinda get annoying, and it's here where I prefer one voice actor's portrayal over the other, rather than an entire dub, and that's extremely rare. So as far as 2005 dubs go, it's alright in my book. Another thing I really enjoyed about the anime is the soundtrack. From calm and tranquil to horror, each piece is used to peak effectiveness to set the mood for a scene. Without this soundtrack, the show wouldn't have had as much of an impact as it did with most audiences. And when I talk about the music, I know it's been talked about to death, but I love this opening song. It's brilliantly surreal and unlike anything I've ever heard. The song itself is really haunting, and it seems appropriate for the overall tone and nature of the show. And the song has some significance bearing towards the story, and it doesn't feel tacked on, at least to me anyway. The more I hear that song, the better. Lastly, you probably knew this was coming, but the violence in this series is fucking legendary. The amount of visceral bodily harm and the ways they're executed is nothing short of unique. People get fucked up on this show, and it relishes in its depravity, showing people exploding with all their entrails and bodily fluids showering the surroundings. It's no surprise that this show is on so many people's most violent of lists, and it's for good reason too. Now that I had my fun talking about the positives, it's back to the negative side of things as I wrap up the review. Some of my other problems aside the issues regarding the general unpleasant tone was, and still is, the ending. It's a huge tease, leaving room for a sequel that will never come. Not only that, but it leaves so many unanswered questions that will never be resolved or brought up ever again in this failed attempt to sequel bait. Which redirects me to the series' running time, and coming from a fan, I think a lot of people will agree with me on this one. The series is too short. 13 episodes is clearly not enough time to cover all the series wants to talk about in length, and as a result, everything falls flat. From what I read, the show tried to condense 79 of the manga's chapters into the 13 episodes we got, not counting the filler OVA, which did very little to answer some of those hard-hitting questions left by the finale, but instead answered this. How did the organization capture Lucy in the first place, and what Nana's been up to since she got taken in by our main characters? Yep, super relevant stuff. Nothing about Lucy, not being dead, instead being reincarnated into two separate bodies for both Lucy and you. Yep, that was a thing. Not addressed at all. So, yeah, read the manga. Going back to my earlier statement, do I still think that Elfen Lied's lost its luster? Sadly, I have to say yes. As it is with film in regards to controversial and transgressive work, there's always something coming out that pushes the boundaries of cinema. The same can be said for anime. There will always be something that dares to come up and disrupt the status quo and overtake another status as the most disturbing or violent imagery to be put on screen or paper. It's an endless cycle. Now, does that really change my thoughts on Elfen Lied and how I feel about it personally? Nah, no it doesn't. It may not sound like it, but I still like the show for what it is. I also owe the show a lot for allowing me to get this far, giving me the spark to start something I can really put my time and effort towards. Granted, I first saw it as a freshman in high school, but the appreciation's still there as far as nostalgic value goes. If you're in the right mindset to watch something ruthlessly violent or genuinely unpleasant, or you're just revisiting the series like I am, definitely give it a watch. But let it be known, it's not the most violent nor the most disturbing thing out there. Trust me, there are worse things out there. I'm the Gorehound, and join me next time when I get into round 2 with the makers of High School of the Dead over Triage X. Until then, I'll see you sick bastards next time.